Now we bring in
Thank
Lara
you.
Price,
Thanks, everyone.
COO of the Philadelphia 76ers, Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, Michele Roberts, Executive Director of the NBPA. Hello, ladies.
Hello, Scott.
Hello, Lara.
Hello, Michele.
Ray, can I start with a quote, Michele? And I think you know where I may be going with this, but I love this. You uttered these words early in your tenure. Lara, do you know where I'm going?
I know.
I think so.
Oh, okay, well, good, but I still want to get the reaction. My past is littered with the bones of men who were foolish enough to think I was someone they could sleep on. I loved it when you said it. I continue to love it. I reference it. You had to stand before a group of male athletes and say, I'm the right person for the job. Were any of those men foolish enough to think that they could sleep on you?
Apparently not. I mean, they
Well, you got the job.
and I said that when it was clear there was an elephant in the room that nobody wanted to address, the fact that I was a girl. And I'm sure they were told, don't say anything about her being a girl, that's illegal, right? So I said to myself, we're not going to get this job without making these men appreciate that there's no reason to be worried about your ability to do this job, despite the fact that you're a woman. And so I said, look, that elephant, let's talk about that elephant. And that's frankly what came out. But there's not a woman that's heard that has done anything other than nod her head. Because
Lara's nodding her head. Tell me your story, Lara. Why does that resonate with you?
100%. You know, starting out in the business, there were no other females. Quite frankly, I was the only female in the room. And, you know, having that respect and them thinking you can do the job was never there. So you just had to prove yourself. So speaking up and going against some of your male counterparts was absolutely part of the culture, especially when we were both coming up. So I think I had a story when I was just starting out in the CBA, and I was at a meeting and some man asked me to get him coffee. So I went and got him the coffee, sat down, and then said, let's start the meeting. And I just saw his face drop. So, you know, those things happen quite, frequently, unfortunately.
Okay, well, but less frequently, I would assume. And to that, Michele, you and I also share an enjoyment of Langston Hughes. And, you know, I'm a big fan of the Dreams Deferred poem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it fester like a sore or does it explode? Obviously, that was from a racial inequality standpoint, but it same applies to gender. And I get the sense, and I've always answered, we know the answer, it explodes. And I feel an explosion of gender equity coming in sports. Do you both feel it as well?
Well, I'll take it, Lara, first. I think, I don't know about explosion. I'm not that optimistic. I will absolutely, though, confess that I've seen some movement. I've only been in sports. Lara's been here much longer than I have. I've only been in sports for a little over 7 years. It was surprisingly bad 7 years ago, and I must confess I've seen some movement in a positive direction. Now, I'm just not as optimistic enough to say explosion, but this is a moment in history which I think is unparalleled in terms of the possibilities. But look. It's not going to reverse itself. I'm at least willing to say that much. Whether it's going to move as rapidly as it should, we'll see.
Lara, give me your take on that change you've seen. You've been doing this quite a while at the professional sports level.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're at an inflection point. I don't think it is an explosion. It's going to take time because it's systemic, and we have to build the pipelines to get, diverse talent into our organizations. But the NBA is focused on it. We're partnering with the NBA Players Association, with Adam and Michele leading. It's a big focus for us, but it's going to take time. We're getting more females in there, but we still don't have the representation necessarily on the basketball, the hockey, the football operations side. The officials, it's happening, but it's just going to take time.
Yeah, but what about the customer side, Lara? Surely you guys are utilizing data that tells you who your customers are. What's that breakdown along a gender line, and how do you intend to have more women come into your community?
So we definitely have the data on that. It's still, I would say it's probably a 60-40 split with male attendance in our fans. So reaching out to them, they're prominent buyers of merchandise for NBA product. But, making sure that we are creating contact, making them feel that they can come into our arenas and providing services for them that, reflect their lifestyles is super important. So we're very focused on that. And, with the pandemic, it's completely changed our business and how we operate. So, we're all, we did an amazing job working through with the bubble, having our games and keeping our players and our fans safe. So, there's going to be a new way to come to games, and we have to adjust to that. And I think we've done a good job so far.
Hey, Michele, where do you stand when it comes to hiring not only employees for the NBPA, WNBPA, but vendors? Where are you? Do you want to see more women involved in the process? Are you making that a priority?
Yes. Not only at the NBPA, but as Lara mentioned, after last summer and the events of last summer, I think the league was doing a fairly good job of moving in that direction. But we've increased our intentionality, and so we have a diversity and inclusion policy here at the NBPA, which we take very seriously. I have encouraged, and I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing both the league do and what other teams are doing to include more people of color, more communities of color in the ranks, as well as women. So, it's last summer, as bad as it was with all that was going on, not even mentioning the pandemic, as bad as it was, the silver lining has been that it's brought renewed attention to these issues of inclusion and diversity, and in almost every area of business, to include professional sports. So 2022 is going to look a lot better than 2021, which looks a lot better than 2020. We're on the rise.
What is the sense of optimism you're feeling right now, Michele, on the grand scale? I think vaccine-induced optimism about where we were, where we are. And if I look at the end of that tunnel and I see that light, where are we in that process? And Lara, same for you.
Yeah, it was so bad last summer and last spring that you can't help but be delighted about where we are now. I mean, I'm hearing more and more about ways to get our fans back in the arenas safely, because that's always been a priority. Same thing with our players. We have better days than others, but we have been able to manage to almost complete this season with very few games that will ultimately end up not being played. We did reduce the number from 82 to 72, but we'll probably play those 72 games. So I think in a year, I never want to say a return to normalcy, because I'm not going to tempt fate, but we've come a lot further than I thought we'd be at this stage. Last summer, I was pretty depressed. I am today waking up with not doing cartwheels, but I'm not exactly trying to slip my wrists either.
No cartwheels at HBSE, Lara, but where are we in the we're almost there realm?
Yeah, no cartwheels, but we're working towards that. I agree with Michele. We're a lot farther along than I thought we would be, but we still have a ways to go. But our optimism is that we will be playing with full arenas next season. Concerts are pushing to do that earlier than we are. But of course, the first and foremost concern is just the safety of our patrons, safety of our players and our staff. So, we're at 25% capacity in Philadelphia and in New Jersey. So we're pushing really hard to get those numbers up for the playoffs, and we're starting to see those restrictions lift in New York, New Jersey, and statewide in Pennsylvania. So I think that we will be a new normal, but open and fully, full fans in the buildings by the fall.
Michele has a shorter purview than you do in the professional sports landscape. What have you seen in sort of that horizon of pro sports, particularly as it applies to ownership? You've had a bunch of different owners there with the Sixers, now sort of a parent company with 2 franchises. In terms of how they deal with data, how they deal with innovation, how they deal with investment, that sports teams they're pillars of much larger operations these days.
Absolutely. So, it started with I would say more operators and, individual owners. And then as the values of these franchises have increased so dramatically over time, you've seen, corporations and private equity now and these SPACs coming in to invest in these teams. So, the need for data, the need to run it actually like a real business, as opposed to just a sports team, that operated, during one season, then it was off for that season. So, data is critical. Our analytics departments on the business side are robust, for all of our business, whether it's corporate partnerships, season ticket sales, and, that applies on the basketball side as well. We have really changed how we look at our business, and we're running it more like a private equity industry would run, their businesses, and holding accountable for growing, whether it's real estate and innovation and, esports, and finding all these other opportunities that are like businesses that complement what we're doing, and growing the pie. So it changes, for the 3 different, managing partner groups that I've worked with, it has evolved completely over time. And, now, it's not just the arena, it's development in and around the arena, and, owning those business and finding those strategic partnerships.
For those who don't know, Josh Harris, of course, of Apollo, David Blitzer of Blackstone, the principal owners of Harris Blitzer. Michele, what does that mean for you? If you had a mom and pop organization on the other side of the negotiating table and your players, now you're cognizant that these are much larger global scale operations. What does that mean for you, not only in just the collective bargaining sense, because that was always the principal function of the union, but it's so much greater now in terms of for-profit arms. You've got Think 450. There's just a lot more you can do in that ecosystem.
Well, I love hearing about these teams growing in value and extending their business lines, especially those lines that are related to basketball, because as you know, that basketball-related income, we get a piece of that.
The 3 most important letters in the NBA, maybe not NBA, BRI.
It's to pray by. So I'm excited when I hear every year over year, that these teams' value is growing and growing and growing. Having said that, what keeps me a little bit bitter is the inability of our players to share in the ownership of those teams. And once we leave the game, once these players leave the game, then technically they're eligible to secure a stake in the team. But given the obvious contribution, no one can dispute it, that the players make to allowing those teams to increase so much in value, it has always disturbed me, even before I got to this job, that active players could not have some ownership interest in these teams. So again, having said that, I love it. I salivate at the notion that our business is growing and growing and growing. But one day, current players are going to be able to enjoy ownership in these teams. So we can work through the conflict issues, which are real. And I'm not suggesting that they're not, but we'd like to be able to dance at the party right now, not have to wait at the time.
Yeah, you and I have talked about sort of that players as equity stakeholders. There are issues. Lara, from your perspective, though, you have relationships with players dating back decades, one of them being Allen Iverson. But you've also seen sort of the off-court maturation from a business perspective of professional athletes. How different is today's pro athlete from 5, 10, 15 years ago?
They've become innovative and changed with the times. I don't want to say that the players, that I know from the past were not taking advantage of it, but with social media, these players understand their value and they've become their own IPs. So, the teams have had to learn how to work with them, because they're off doing their own things in their own deals. And in, some cases they have more followers than the teams do, if you look at the top players in the league. So, that has been a change in how we operate with them. We still partner because of our brands and, the uniforms, but, they're very savvy. They're very savvy. They're doing their own, OTT programming, like they're doing their NFTs on their own, and the former players are doing that too, quite frankly. I'm actually engaged, talking to Allen Iverson, and he's been approached about doing NFTs already. So, that the Retired Players Association is engaging in all these new ways that the players can find different ways to cut the revenues.
Please, I'm so old. I used to hang around in the halls of that arena with Pat Croce when he was yelling for Bubba Chuck. I don't know how many people remember that Allen's Bubba Chuck to some, right?
Absolutely. People who are close to him still call him that.
Right. So Michele, I ask you then, in this changing landscape, because you have made it quite clear that you are exiting this position in the not too distant future, you've set up something for your successor. Like presidents leave notes in the drawer for the next person coming. And I almost said next guy, soon maybe next woman. Yeah. What is your note going to say to your successor?
I've been writing that note for a while.
I am really good. I didn't know that. So this is good.
I really have, because as you know, when my predecessor didn't leave under favorable terms, so I wasn't able to sort of connect with him and get some feedback about what to expect. So I've been writing a note that's pretty long, and hopefully I'm setting a table that will be helpful. But the bottom line is, and it didn't take me very long to figure it out. Sure, this is sports and it's entertainment, and all of that. But at the end of the day, this is a business, and what I'm managing are the partial owners of a business, and so I very much view this position as very akin to a CEO of a company. And to the extent my successor has any doubt about it, he or she will no longer once they read my very, very, very long note.
Can I get a peek at it before anybody else? Can I get a look? Maybe after you're done?
If anyone sees it before then my successor, you'll be that somebody. How's that?
Thank you. Michele, Lara, thank you so much for taking part. We really do appreciate it.